All right. Well, while people are joining, I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Today's webinar, I had Matt here join us from Susquehanna Insurance. I got to know Matt a while ago at a local chamber event. So it's all local here, all local people out of Lancaster County area. And I invited him on here today to discuss five things essentially cyber insurance won't tell you. Matt and I have had different discussions on cyber insurance, the different requirements, how things have changed. But before we kind of get into any of that, I'd want to give him an opportunity to introduce himself, and then we can get started.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I'm the vice president at Susquehanna Insurance. We are a local property and casualty insurance agent. We have an office in Lancaster off Delp Road and then in Lidditz as well. We specialize in manufacturing, commercial property, and retail, primarily the top three things we do. And yeah, enjoyed getting to know Nick and share some ideas on cyber insurance and the ever evolving risk it is.
Yeah, it kind of seems like there's the two worlds are colliding a lot more. I would say between insurance, legal, and just various aspects. Technology kind of ends up touching a lot of different areas of business. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense that we would end up having a lot of similar conversations.
Yeah, we get nerdy pretty quick, with the chamber events. We get into it and yeah, it's
Yeah,
fun.
no doubt, no doubt. So today we're just going to go over five controls that insurance carriers look at before approving or paying out your cyber insurance. And, we're going to go through a couple of things exactly why certain IT requirements have been changing rapidly is because some of these things to keep up with how quickly technology is moving, it's been very difficult for insurance carriers, providers. Legal certainly is another area. I mean, it's just happening a little too quickly. I'd even say in the education realm as well, it's moving so quickly. So, how can you understand what requirements that you need for your organization? How do you know exactly how to approach something as critical as making sure what you understand about cyber insurance? We'll talk about some of the reasons that these claims are denied and how to avoid them. And ultimately, what I want to try to wrap up onto is can you align your IT strategy with your cyber insurance policy to reduce those risks? Ultimately, and I don't want to spill the beans early here, but if there is no strategy as part of a leadership team to look at IT and make sure that it's covering your business risk, ultimately you might be a step behind. So with that, we're going to keep this pretty loose. We're just going to dive right into things. And the first, I asked Matt as we kind of develop this PowerPoint. Here, give me five really interesting controls that might not get paid out or that people aren't aware of that they might be misunderstanding about their cyber insurance policy. So the thing number one here is invoice manipulation. Matt, if you could give a little more description on this.
Yeah, so first caveat is that these things are a general, not covered. Each policy is very specific, and some will cover certain things we discussed, and some won't. And so it's important to talk with your IT provider, your insurance agent to figure out which ones are and which ones are not. Generally speaking, this is five things that will not be covered on a practicality basis of a lot of endorsements added to your package policy. They say, hey, we have cyber, we'll throw it onto your policy. Those are real limited in scope. If you have a standalone cyber policy through an actual cyber carrier, then these things very well could be covered. So the first one here is invoice manipulation. And this one is one of the largest risks that we're seeing in the insurance industry. Back in 2022, there were 34,000 cases of this, and the average claim was about $280,000. So it's sizable. And it really falls into that middle ground of, is it crime? Is it cyber? Is it my fault? Is it their fault? So the best way that we like to discuss some of our examples, first one that would be covered that is not technically this is if you have it's called social engineering. And if you have a social engineering claim where we had a client of ours, their CFO was out of the office and working at home, and the bad actor got into their system, watched their emails, and then at the right time sent an email from the CEO's email, and they were impersonating him saying, hey, please wire $25,000 to this account for a marketing expense. The CFO did it, didn't think twice about it, and then it happened again. Turns out it was a bad actor. The CEO had never requested those things. It was a bad actor. Those were paid. It was the employee, it was the business, and so that was paid out under social engineering endorsement on that cyber policy. This is a little different, where a bad actor gets in, tracks, monitors, sees who in your company handles invoices, who you deal with, what vendors you work with, what clients you work with, and then they will see, hey, an order has been processed. They will note that, and then they will watch that you send an invoice out, or before you do, they'll come in and change the invoice, change their routing and account number, and some other key factors of it. And then your client will get the invoice, think it's legitimate, wire the money out, and then you are still waiting to say, hey, where's my payment? You circle back around and say, hey, are you guys going to pay? Typically, you're pretty good. They say, we did. We paid back, 2 weeks ago, and the money is gone. And so that is not your fault. It's kind of their fault. Their policy generally won't cover because it was somewhat legitimate coming from your system, but it wasn't your system's fault, your own customer's fault, or your fault, your employees, because it wasn't sent through them. So it kind of falls in this gap of who pays it? Is it not paid? Generally speaking, you can ask for this endorsement to be added to your insurance policy. And there's a limit that would reimburse you for lost payment. It won't cover your client who paid the money. They would have to handle that on their own side of things, but it would help recoup some of the funds that you would have gotten on an invoice basis that was paid wrongly, I guess, by the client.
So I'd even say this is over the past 12 months, there's been a lot happening in the cybersecurity world, but this is probably the number one thing that we see. And it's ironic here. It's their thing number one, right? Is this has been happening to a number of clients, and it's not even just that a bad actor got into a client of ours, but it might be a vendor for our client or a customer of our client, which is even worse. And so um, this kind of goes down the line quite a bit, and you're starting to see the lines between IT and legal and insurance and customer relations really blur. But this is probably the number one thing that we actually do see, especially over the past 12 months, because it's so easy to create an email address now these days, and with the amount of leaks happening, it's really easy to know how or who I should say pays invoices for a certain company. So all you need to do is do a little bit of research. It's widely available online, and you can start pretending to be somebody within an organization, even if you didn't compromise their email. So it's very appropriate, and we see this quite often.
Yeah, the wire transfer is a big deal. That one is covered, but this invoice manipulation is a little more creative. They call it advanced or creative social engineering, and it can fall between those gaps of a coverage pretty quick. But yeah, we're seeing them more and more. It's easy to do. You can take an invoice, scrub it out quick, and rewrite it, and the money is gone.
Yeah, yeah, that's and just a real quick fact about that before we move on. I think number two is we've actually had instances where we had customers where this exact thing happened, and if it goes overseas, pretty much like the number one thing they tell you is report it to law enforcement, and sometimes law enforcement, if it's based in the United States, it can actually turn out relatively well. We've even had clients in the past that were able to get money back. But if the moment it goes overseas, which is more and more common, it
Yeah.
becomes near impossible. So moving on, here we go. Wait time deductible.
Wait time deductible. Yeah, let's think about this. Is kind of in our world, the property casualty side of things, a deductible, or even for your personal auto or home, you pay a deductible first. So you're responsible for the first $1,000 on a home policy. And the goal of that is to mitigate against smaller losses. And so if you have a window that's damaged for 200-300 bucks, you're just going to pay for that. And your insurance company is not going to be responsible for it, just to mitigate against smaller claims. And so this is that's the deductible on a cyber policy, generally speaking, is a time-based deductible. It's not dollar-based. So you don't owe $1,000 and then your cyber policy kicks in, but it's time-based. So say your system's down and you can't take payments at a retail store for 6 hours. Your deductible, your wait time deductible, say maybe is 12 hours. So then that would fall under the deductible. Therefore, there would be no claim to go under your cyber policy. So it's just kind of, some people think, hey, as soon as I'm down, my insurance policy kicks in and I'm getting paid right away. And they don't realize that the deductible does apply. It's just time based on a cyber policy.
And this is important too, is you're thinking about IT strategy. This is where it's really important to make sure that you understand how quickly can you recover from an incident. So, for example, you say your deductible was that first 12 hours. Can you actually recover quicker than that time frame? Because if you get beyond that, obviously you're going to start getting paid out. But the whole idea is how can you recover first and foremost, but how quickly can you recover from that? And that's something that we often see executives wanting to know more and more because of some of these cyber insurance policy questionnaires are directly addressing how quickly can you recover.
Yeah, totally. They want you to take some responsibility here, where you guys have the right stops in place, the right procedures in place, that if something does happen, you're able to stop it, mitigate it, and really handle it internally before having to go out and pay out. Insurance, generally speaking, is meant for larger, big losses, big claims, not for the few $1,000s stuff that you just see on a day-to-day basis.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. All right. System improvements not covered.
System improvements, we were talking about this one. Yeah, it's after you have a claim, it generally exposes a lot of things. Hey, you should have had this system in place, or you should have had this upgrade, or you should have this. Yeah, it's quickly changing in the IT world, yeah, just the space, how quickly things change and how quickly it's evolving. And so once you have a claim, you might need to come back in and say, hey, I need to update from Windows 98 to the newest platform. And that costs money. Insurance policy does not cover that. So insurance is responsible for what you had at the time of loss. We are recouping and recovering what you had at that time of loss, not upgrading, improving, making it better. So we're saying a way to think about it is on the property and casualty side of things. If your building is destroyed and it didn't have a sprinkler system and it needs to be rebuilt with one, they're not going to pay for a sprinkler system because you didn't have it at the time of loss. And so something similar here. Your IT system goes down, you need to upgrade it. You can't add that in. Hey, we'll just throw this part of our claim to help us upgrade. That's not going to be approved by the insurance company.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but one of the hidden aspects of this is cyber insurance will require proof of that you actually did have something in place, and so this is where documentation becomes a very critical part. Documentation is probably, if you think about IT, what IT people do, is probably one of the more boring aspects of the job because all we're doing is documenting what's there in certain systems. But this is where it becomes invaluable if you have to go back for something. Beyond just being effective and efficient, just having proper documentation to actually to talk about what exists inside infrastructure or network or system is incredibly important. So again, if something's not well documented, you could face a lot of pushback on even just getting anything covered if you can't prove that it existed prior to the system outage.
Yeah, or even worse, get it denied. The applications you guys will have to fill out most likely if you do have a cyber policy, they can be pretty in depth and require a lot of information. And if you skimp out on some or don't provide fully accurate, when push comes to shove during a claim process, they'll go back to that application and say, hey, you had X,
Mhm.
but you didn't. You actually had something different. You were fraudulently misrepresenting on the application, and then your claim could be entirely denied, even in worst case scenario. So yeah, like Nick said, even back to the last point, if something's going wrong, just be in touch with your insurance company, your insurance provider, your IT folks as well. It's better to know for us than not. And so you just want to let us know as soon as possible if something's happening. And like I said, document every single thing, which we can go back then and it makes the paper trail pretty clear and easy.
So let me ask you this real quick. So if they go ahead and they sign up for cyber insurance, and then 6 months in, as they're working through strategy and say, hey, we'd really love to implement this security tool or framework, and so they go and make some of these changes. Can they come back then to the insurance carrier provider to make sure that those amendments are made and adjusted for, or do they got to wait until that renewal time?
Yeah, it depends on the insurance company.
Okay.
We definitely can have the conversations and say, hey, here's a new improvement that's been upgraded. You probably wouldn't see a price discount. Of course, the more secure you are, the less your price will be, your insurance premium will be.
Mhm.
But it would definitely help the system and us to have documentation if something does go wrong that we can say, hey, they did have this in place. Let's make sure that they're recovered for this.
They're doing their due diligence, in other words.
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. All right, noon or ongoing breaches.
Yeah, and this we were talking to. This is essentially you can't buy fire insurance once your house is on fire. So it's great. People don't want to pay for insurance, generally speaking. It's a cost that is almost intangible. You can't see it, and you don't want to use it. But you can't wait until you have a cyber attack to then buy cyber insurance. And to the last point, then too, even you want to make sure that you, in documenting everything, you do tell folks. So some people might not even know what's going on might not know they have an attack or a breach right away. And so make sure you're documenting everything with your IT providers, with your insurance company to let them know if anything is fishy, if anything's weird, so that it is documented properly. So if you do have an attack going on, maybe you do know about it or don't know about it, and then say you don't know about it, and then you buy an insurance policy that comes in, and then after their due diligence realize that there was something going on and you were negligent, then the coverage could be denied based off of that. Of course, if you do know that you're currently in a cyber attack and you buy a cyber policy, then that would not be covered. But yeah, just to the last point, then it's documentation, which is huge. So as soon as you, even if it's below your deductible, even if it is something very minor, you want to make sure you let your insurance provider know, hey, we just had something happen. Just want to put you on notice. Here's what's going on. We will keep you updated, the size and scale. You put a claim in, or at least you notify us. Doesn't need to be paid out. Just want to make sure that the insurance companies know everything that's going on before if something happens, then you have a claim denied or paid minimally, which is not great.
And usually after there is a breach, and then there is a quite a bit of cyber forensics that ends up happening here, especially as insurance carriers want to make sure that, hey, things are actually, like, where exactly did this attack come from? How did it happen? What was their negligence on this part? And so there is a lot of in-depth forensics that happens after a breach occurs. And one thing, we talked about this the other day, but most ransomware will wait out about over 100 days before activating. And so one thing we often see is that people think, hey, I just clicked on something, I got ransomware, which can certainly be the case, but we're seeing more and more that ransomware actually can sit and wait for about 100 days or more. Actually, that number might even be larger now. And a big reason for that is because backup systems can tend to purge that data, and so they're waiting it out. And so we can even see, I've even heard of scenarios that went over 200 days. Again, they're waiting for the backup systems to purge all their old history, and so then it becomes a battle of, can you even restore or recover? Because all you're going to do is restore and recover that ransomware that's been lying in wait, and it's just going to activate right away after the backups have been restored. So again, as the forensics are starting to happen, and there's a pattern here, that something has been lying in wait for some time, it just creates a lot of gray area, as far as what's covered, what's not covered, how did this happen, and any gray area, especially when it comes to getting paid out, especially in the midst of a breach or after a breach, is usually not a great combination.
Yeah, transparency is huge. That's the biggest thing you can do. As soon as you have any sort of event, whether you, yeah, any sort of event, even if you didn't know about it for the 100 days that they're waiting, which is, yeah, more and more the thing they take and they wait for the opportune time and then strike. And yeah,
Yeah.
you get caught.
All right, let's work into our last one here, which I thought was an interesting one. Talk a little bit about cryptojacking. This was an interesting one.
Yeah, the cyber insurance industry, the insurance industry in general is we built our frameworks and our pricing based off of known risks. You have a building, you have a protection class, you have the size. It's built off of built with brick. We have a price for you. The thing about cyber insurance is that it changes literally. Nick and I are talking almost by the week these days, where what was covered a year ago or what we saw initially happening in 2020 now has entirely changed and evolved where even two-factor has become not obsolete but something that can be compromised. So this is one that we came up and saw and thought it was interesting how these hackers will hack into your system and they don't necessarily care about ransomware or getting a ransom payment for your system. They just want to use your compute power. And so they'll come in and hack into your systems, your cloud, and then use your compute to mine Bitcoin or mine cryptocurrency. And of course, then that causes slow move of systems. It causes cloud, your price of electricity, your your electric bills are going to be higher. Your bills for cloud services might be a little higher. And so it's something that Nick was saying can be in the background and you might not have any idea. Your computers might be running hot, the fans might be really working overtime. You might think that just is because it's 95 degrees out right now. But it could be because these guys on the back end of your system using your compute to actually mine and create Bitcoin, which is something, yeah, we didn't think we'd ever talk about. At least I didn't think we'd talk about even 5 years ago. And now it's something that is coming up more and more. We've not personally seen a claim of this scale or this type, but you never know. And knock on wood, we don't. but just good for people to be aware that even though it might not be a ransomware or it might not be a malware type thing, it could even be something like this. You never know where your system could be vulnerable and then compromised and then utilized by some bad actors and criminals and just, yeah, bad people.
And I think this bigger the bigger overarching theme I see with this one specifically is that these policies are still evolving rapidly because again, technology is changing that quickly. And so one of the things I want to make sure that we point out collectively is that there should be an ongoing strategy to make sure that you understand the evolving landscape, but that is technology and cybersecurity. There's a lot of we see a lot of people out there, and I talk to quite a bit of clients and prospects that discuss, man, it's really hard to keep up. Like I don't even know what's out there. I don't even know if I'm even utilizing everything I'm paying for. I don't even know if I'm secure because basically every time I turn around, something new comes up. And so the main highlight, even with this one, even though I will imagine someday you'll pay this out, unfortunately, is or somebody will want you to pay this out, I should even say, is
Yeah.
that things change. And if you don't necessarily have strategic conversations around the evolving landscape and what do the next 6 months look like, 12 months, 18, what do the next 3 years look like? How are you adjusting to the evolving landscape? Because ultimately, that's a pretty big it's a pretty big shift for people to really start in at one point technology was more simplistic, you could understand it a little bit better, but it's evolving as wide as it is deep. So
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, is just even have a plan. Have your cyber folks, your cyber policy, and your insurance agent in one pocket, and then your IT folks in the other pocket, and just a plan when something could happen. They love targeting these guys. You think they go after the big time behemoths, which some of them do, but they love small business because generally there's not the controls in place to prevent certain things like this for happening. So actually, small businesses are their number one attack. And so just being IT professionals, CEOs, CFOs, make sure you guys and your teams have something in place that when and if it does happen, you guys know how to respond, take the right action internally, externally with your clients to make sure it's good. What we are experiencing right now in the insurance industry, the attacker group, Scattered Spider, is hitting the insurance carriers. And each one, it's interesting, has a different way of had different protocols in the way of protecting. And so some got hit harder than others. And so it just comes down to preparedness and being ready, almost prepare for the worst possible thing, brainstorm and say, what is worst case scenario here? Things we can't even maybe think about, such as cryptojacking. And how is your team going to respond and make sure that your stuff and your systems are protected correctly?
yeah, which is a perfect segue into we're gonna get near the end of we want to stick to 30 minutes at the most. But this is the one thing I really want to make sure people understand how IT strategy and cyber policies should go hand in hand. And for the most part, I try to get it into There's steps. There's probably more than three steps in here, but review and document your security controls. I talked about this earlier. You need to understand everything that's happening from a security perspective. And so the first thing you want to understand is whether you're internal IT at a company or whether you're a leader in an organization, you're outsourcing your IT, you want to make sure you understand all of your security controls. Where does that documentation live? How up to date is it? I've seen a lot of people come in with super out of date out of date documentation. So understand all the security controls and that and where that documentation lives. Step one. Step two is simply involve IT leadership in those policy renewals. So again, who is the IT resource internally, externally outsourced? It doesn't make a difference. Leadership should be involving IT as a strategy in the policy renewal process and making sure that they understand all those risks. Certainly, you fill out something incorrectly, whether that's intended or not, whether it's maliciously intended or not, doesn't make much of a difference. If you put something incorrect on that policy renewal, or when you're signing up, that's going to carry some weight to it down the road. And step three is align your IT strategy. It's kind of like this overarching theme. Get the leadership teams in IT working out, even outside your policies. Like you shouldn't, though, if the only time you're talking to your IT person, again, internally, externally, is when you do these policy renewals, you're probably going to be a bit behind. What I always say is if you go through these policy renewals and you're having to make a lot of adjustments, you're probably behind on your strategy. If there's one or two things that come up, all right, that makes a lot of sense. Things move quick. maybe you just didn't get to it yet, but if you're finding, "Oh, wow, we're gonna have to go and change a lot of our processes and what we do," you might start to see a little bit of an out of date strategy, and that you're not even being strategic at all, and that really starts carrying significant weight to it. Just like Matt can tell stories, I can also tell stories of a lot of organizations where these policies have rescued people from their quarter, whether they made their quarter or not, or even their whole year. I've seen a lot of different policies that really help people out, and it's really because there was a great strategy behind what they were doing. And then I've also unfortunately seen it the other side where they've been denied as well. Not a great strategy, not a whole lot of forethought into how IT is affecting them or protecting them from their financial obligations. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I'll try to keep it at those three steps. And Matt, I don't know if you have anything else to add there, or do you?
Yeah, just one quick thing. As it's
Uh,
evolving, as we've discussed many times already, insurance policies will come for the renewals. Share that with your IT folks
mm,
because there may be new exclusions. So, hey, last year this was covered, but now this renewal period, it very well could not be. Or there's new endorsements. Hey, you have options now of these 6 endorsements that may cover things such as cryptojacking that weren't a thing the past 2 years. So it's a weird combination of insurance language, legal language, and then IT language that just share with your agent, make sure they're in the conversation, and then with your IT folks to make sure you're not missing something on a year-to-year renewal basis.
yeah. Yeah, being an ostrich, sticking your head in the sand is not a great strategy.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna try to wrap this up here. I don't know if there is any questions out there. But I did want to give a brief moment here for people to share any questions if they have any. For the most part, I just want to reiterate: make sure you're having thought conversations with one another as a team internally with your IT, making sure that you're all involved in that process. Making sure collaboration in 2025 is probably the most important thing that an organization can do. For the most part, if you're not collaborating, if people are working in silos, that's probably where you're going to see most of your issues come up down the road. So if you're sensing a theme here, collaboration is going to be key.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
All right. Well, no questions came in. I'm good with finishing up 2 minutes earlier, 2 minutes early. So hey, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I will get this video uploaded to our YouTube channel and make sure that all the contact information is up there. Here's our contact information here. If you have any questions, I encourage you out there. If you guys have any cyber questions in terms of policies and what it means for them, even if you're not using Susquehanna as your provider, contact Matt. He's a treasure trove of information, and more than willing to help people on this journey. It's definitely a complicated process.
Yeah,
And
we're happy to help. Look, just review. Say, hey, I have this current policy. What do you think about it? Whether it's an endorsement on your current package policy or if it's a standalone cyber, we have our finger on the pulse of what's happening on the cyber world, what companies are competitive, which ones are backing down coverage. So yes, shoot it over. Happy to do a quick review for you and let you know if there's any weak spots or anything we would recommend.
perfect. And likewise, if anybody has any questions about how their cyber strategy or their IT strategy affects how what they do on their day-to-day operations, certainly as it involves cyber insurance, please feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate your time and energy.
Of course, yeah.
This won't be the last time we collaborate in this sort of
Definitely
method.
not. Yep.
Always good seeing you,
Thanks, man.
everybody. Enjoy your Wednesday and don't let the heat get to you.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Take care.